Welcome back to Uncover Your Magic. It's my 52nd episode. To think a year ago today, we were in lockdown, wondering how many weeks we were going to be living like this. I remember watching the news every day, waiting to see when we are going to be free again. The girls were in their rooms doing school on Zoom. Richard was the forager, getting groceries and peeling his clothes off in the garage and sanitizing everything we touched. And I was trying to figure out how to make a podcast and making 3 meals a day for everyone. It seems like a blur, but we did it. Well, those weeks turned into months, and those months turned into a year. Now, looking back at that year and reflecting on the lessons that I learned and that we learned as a family, and where we are today is a level above where we were a year ago with so much more growth and gratitude for life. I pray that each of you listening can look back at this year and think of each lesson as a blessing. And remember, life is here to teach us lessons so we can learn and grow each day. Always learn to be the victor and in any situation rather than the victim. Look at every adversity as a gift and something you needed to get where you want to go. I'm all about surrender and not having to be fixated on the outcome or how it will show up. If I could leave you all with those words to soak in before we get on to our guest today, I think they are key to living a life with ease and grace and not letting the what you may think are obstacles stop you. And remember, there are only lessons to create the life you are meant to be living. So, on to today's episode. I am joined by Lisa Tahir, who reached out to me to be a guest on the show. It's been so interesting learning about Lisa's journey and this book she has written called The Chiron Effect. What is Chiron? I know you are all thinking that right now because I did and had never heard of Chiron before. It is so fascinating how she found out about it and the path that led her to write this incredible book. This episode will open up a new door for you to venture down so you can dive even deeper into an understanding of who you are at a much more in-depth level. After reading her book, I know this interview will be so interesting, and we will all learn so much about something that affects us all and we weren't even aware of. A little bit of Lisa's background before we get started. Lisa Tahir is a licensed clinical social worker. She is a certified EMDR level 1 and is also certified in Reiki. She is a level 2 in Reiki and is a thought coach through the Institute for Transformational Thinking. She is the host of the weekly podcast, All Things Therapy, on LA Talk Radio. And since 2016, she lives in both Los Angeles and New Orleans and is the author of the book we are going to dive deep into today called The Chiron Effect, a book about healing our core wounds through astrology, empathy, and self-forgiveness. So without further ado, please welcome Lisa Tahir to the show. So welcome, Lisa Tahir, to the show.
Ashley,
Welcome,
thank you
Lisa.
so much for having me on your show for the
Oh,
magic.
you're
Welcome.
so welcome.
I mean, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You're used to being the podcast host and being the interviewer. It's fun to be interviewed.
I am.
You're coming from New Orleans, and you know, I was telling you before we hit record that your publicist came to me, and I was reading about you, and now having the podcast a year in, and getting these emails, and when I started reading about you and learning, and I go deep in it, and I listen to your podcast, and I listen to all the interviews. I got your book. I'm trying to learn about this Chiron effect, and it's just so fascinating. But I was just going deeper and deeper this morning, and I was like, oh, no wonder she's here with me today. We're like sisters. We think alike. She has the same, all the same books and the mindset, the law of attraction, the Abraham Hicks, all the things. I'm like, oh yes. And this. So anyway, I'm so grateful that you're here. And so, like I said before, Uncover Your Magic is, in my mind, kind of showing us your journey of when, leading us to the magic, when you discovered the magic and how you grew up. And, I think the way that what I have read and understood of you is just so fascinating. I think people will get to know more of the core, Lisa, if you explain
Yeah.
that before we get into the Chiron, all that Chiron stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to do that, Ashley. And I appreciate that we are so aligned in the things that are important to us and creating our life deliberately versus just by chance through the teachings of Abraham and various psycho spiritual tools and techniques that everyone listening can learn and adopt and bring into their own lives.
Yes. Yes. When when you think of how we think, like most of my listeners obviously think the same way, but how we think of, law of attraction, how everything's always working for you, and all the, alignment and vibration and all the um just looking at life as it's easy and getting into this place to live this beautiful life. And I see how you have lived your life and to be an example for that whole mindset. So
Yeah.
would you mind starting with your kind of your, like, how you grew, where was your turning point in your life? What started this whole journey?
Well, I've always been on the journey, as we all are. I don't think I had such consciousness of the fact that I'm on a journey that I'm able to shape and create until the last 5 years, 4 to 5 years, when I really started to apply myself and want to learn more about the laws of the universe and just how to have life go a bit easier for me than what it had been for most all of my life until 4 or 5 years ago, believing that I had to effort, that I had to perform, that I had to generate a lot from myself to make things happen, not knowing that the universe really wants to help us, really wants to be like backing us and supporting us. And it came from, the beliefs that we have as a therapist. I know they come from what we learned often in our family of origin and in our upbringing. And our caretakers did the best that they could based upon what they knew. And when we come of age, it's up to us to really decide how we're going to live. And if it's going to be through the patterns we were taught, or if we're going to choose to learn new things. So I actually have been completely in this process of learning new things in the last 4 or 5 years. And my book was birthed out of that. And that's why I'm here with you,
All
even
right.
is an
Well,
outgrowth.
so 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's
Yeah.
only been that long,
Well, I mean, I've been a healing professional for 20 years, so my
right?
heart has always been about service and about helping people and helping myself, but specifically with manifesting very deliberately, very consciously. I feel like I've just gotten up to speed in the last 4 or 5 years, which with knowing like I can own this process, I can really do it faster. But I have been a healing professional for 20 years
Got it.
and in my own healing for 20 years.
And why were you in your own healing? What sparked that?
Yeah, I talk in my book about growing up in a household where we were provided for physically, but I grew up with abuse and trauma and things that shaped me to believe in lack and limitation and not value my own self. It's why I have been in therapy for 20 years to really heal those deep wounds within myself and learn how to love myself. We hear that a lot, loving yourself. But when the
Mhm.
rubber meets the road, that really has to do with how you show up for yourself every day in your life, like the things that you tell yourself. And we often actually really are hard on ourselves. We think we change by saying, you could have done that better. Why are you being so stupid? And that's not at all how we create our lives or heal or even encourage ourselves. It's more from the perspective of like a loving coach, like, hey, sweetie, you're going to have another opportunity to do that again. It's okay. Like, I see you trying your best. You did good enough. Like, you are good enough. And it's really by softening our inner voice and applying a lot of empathy and self-forgiveness, as I do talk about in my book, that I've been able to really deeply care and affirm myself and teach clients to do that as well. Is that
Right.
resonating with you?
Yes. So when you were in your childhood, you say it was you were physically taken care of, but it really had a lot of trauma and abuse. And you were kicked out of your house. And will you tell me why that happened and where you had two backpacks and left?
Sure, that's in the last chapter of my book, Medicine for the Soul, sharing where I've met a lot of women in the last few years that were actually kicked out of their houses also at ages 17, 19 for various reasons. And I didn't know that so many other women have had that experience. And for me, honestly, I don't know why. I don't think there is a why. There was addiction that one of my parents was dealing with. And when a parent is addicted, it causes them to do all sorts of things they would never do in their right mind. So I've come to a place of compassion and forgiveness, towards my family around them thinking the right thing to do was to put me out of the house because now 30 years later almost, I feel like that definitely taught me these deep lessons that I didn't know at the time, how to be resilient, how to be resourceful, like how to be out on my own at 19 and figure out life, without all the tools, but I did it, and like I've become a powerful person as a result. Like probably many of you listening, things that happen that you didn't expect, causing you to have to grow up fast or sooner, like when you really are in that process, you just figure it out. And, sure, I wish things would have been easier, but then I wouldn't be who I am today. So I've come
Right.
to really just see it all as the silver lining of it got me to write a book, teach principles that can help you change your own life and your beliefs. So I actually feel grateful for that experience today.
Yeah, I love that thinking. And
Yeah.
before I introduced you, in my introduction, that's funny that I was talking about looking at obstacles as gifts
Yeah.
instead of looking at them as an obstacle or a wall to climb over, to look at it like this must be something that is going to teach me something that I need to learn to get
Yeah.
to the other side of the wall or whatever. But when you think of how, so I have two daughters, and
Okay.
I remember listening. So I have a course that I teach kids with the law of attraction called Raising Confidence. And it kind of sprouted from this podcast. And when I heard that you were interested in like that, deal with high school kids too, right?
Yes. I love working with high school kids and college kids.
Yes. And so does that stem from you knowing how you grew up and you wanting to help others to have the tools that you didn't have? Because that's
It
where I have
definitely
that
does,
need.
Ashley. Yeah. Yes. 100%.
So how do you, what are you teaching? They're in therapy with these high school kids, like teaching them to get through, like, especially just what they went through last year and getting into college and all that stuff.
Well, I think when I work with high school kids in particular, it's about communication. And I know communication is key to really be able to maneuver in our lives well and successfully. And a lot of people, a lot of adults even have a hard time communicating what they think and what they feel. Sometimes we're not even sure how we feel or think. So I definitely work with high schoolers about identifying and expressing their thoughts and their feelings in a way where they can be heard and knowing it's okay to disagree, to have your own opinions, and also being open to listen. The skill of listening is so powerful, as you know, to
Mhm.
just be able to sit without thinking about what you're going to say and just be with another person open mindedly and open heartedly and cultivating that in our sessions together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm so about that. And it's all about being present in the moment, in the now, teaching
Yeah,
kids to, this is all we have is right now. And what are you going to do with this moment? And, I love that that's a passion of yours. I love that
it
because it's
is.
huge of mine. And you don't have children,
I
right? So
don't.
that's
I
like
don't.
your children, like you're getting
Yes,
that fix from that, right?
I am. Absolutely.
I love that. Okay. So here we are in our therapy. You went to college,
Yeah.
got a master's,
Yeah.
and all on your own, so you think of
Yeah.
being resilient, right? And knowing that you just figured it out. Think of the strength that you have, and to show people like you can be kicked out of your house, and then what am I going to do? So you were on a mission, right? And to
Yes.
do something. So where were you going now? So now we're going to go to college, get our master's in,
Definitely. master's degree in social work at Tulane University here in New Orleans, where I still am a part of. I was a fitness instructor for 12 years at Tulane University. I still work out at their gym. And just, my life, it was going really well, Ashley. And yet, about again, going back to this 5 years ago, I felt like as a therapist and as a person, what is the narrative beyond? In our healing process, beyond telling the old story of what happened to us, what
Right.
we experience, like what is beyond that. And I knew that I could live better, even. I wanted more. And I wasn't sure what that more was. Like, I think many people listening, your life could be going well, but you just feel like hungrier for more satisfaction, is
Hmm.
what it comes down to. And that's when in meditation, I started meditating about 5 years ago and really enjoying that stillness where I noticed ideas would come to mind and thoughts would come to mind, an email to send, a person to text, or people started coming to me even just more easily as I set an intention. I'd like to have more success in work, in relationships, and just kind of notice what happens once you start doing that. And I felt led to explore Chiron, Chiron, which I only knew to be the archetypal wounded healer that Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, spoke about in his work on the collective unconscious that I remembered in grad school at some point. But
Ah, okay.
didn't really have a lot of significance to me. And I was like, okay, whatever. And it kept coming up, Chiron. So I finally Googled Chiron and learned that Chiron in astronomy is a minor planet slash comet between Saturn and Uranus in our solar system. It has an odd elliptical orbit and was the first of the Centaur class. And Chiron was also a centaur. So that's how astronomer Charles Cowell named this heavenly body after the healing centaur named Chiron. And in Greek mythology, he was the founding father of the healing arts. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool story. And then from there, I learned that Chiron in astrology, in our birth chart, which your sun sign. People are like, oh, I'm a Gemini, I'm a Sagittarius. Well, you also have a Chiron in your birth chart. And this is completely different from if you're a Gemini or Libra or Scorpio or Pisces. This Chiron placement in an astrological house addresses one main area of core wounding, or the area where you experience the most vulnerability, and it's on a spectrum. For some people, it might be a core wounding. For others, it's the area that you feel really sensitive about. You might even kind of protect this part of your personality or your life. You might hide it because you fear being judged. You might even feel shame about this part of yourself. And it looks like things such as a wounding in your sense of self esteem. It may be a core wounding by neglect or by abandonment. So that's when I started to get really excited, Ashley. And I spent 3.5 years researching and writing about Chiron so we can really learn what's our main area of vulnerability so that you don't go to therapy like thinking something's wrong with you. You go to therapy with like, this is the area where I need some support to strengthen myself in. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes, and I love the fact about the therapy. And that whenever anyone says they're going to therapy, I always think, oh, you're going to go back and talk about all the things that, in the past and all the problems. So let's make them bigger. Let's bring them back to the
Right.
forefront. And I love that's when it clicked with me when I heard that because I love the how you it's so like I said before, it's like the Chiron. I've never heard that word. So you did at school because you were studying that
Yeah.
thing. So when you go back to the things for me now, can we go with the chart so I can kind of
Let's
can
do
you
it.
talk me
Yeah.
through it right at this
Yeah,
point?
of
I think that would
course.
help. Okay.
Yeah.
So we go to her website, which is New Orleans, NOLA therapy.com, and you can find your own Chiron. And that's what we did. And she's going to show or tell me what my
Yeah.
Chiron is. Okay.
Okay, Ashley. So your Chiron is in the sign of Pisces. And this speaks to a vulnerability up to and including a core wounding in self care and the immaterial world. And what that looks like for you and anyone else with Chiron and Pisces is that when you're wounded, when you're feeling disempowered, it's as if you feel victimized. And you might even have engaged in addictive habits, addictive behaviors, trying to cope with your emotions. You might be overly giving, like you give, to the extent beyond what's really taking care of yourself, and you end up feeling depleted. Yet people might not know that to be true for you. So you know, you care for others like in an overly giving way to compensate for really wanting and needing support for yourself. So the work for
Hmm.
your placement comes through learning to set healthy boundaries, learning to develop self-care practices that really fill up your own love tank inside of you, and personal spirituality that nourishes your soul, that makes sense for you, be it spirituality, in a traditional sense or in a non-traditional sense through nature. And it sounds like you found that through all the teaching, the teachings of Abraham and law of attraction, and like you're right there. You've been healing your Chiron even as a podcaster without even knowing it. Is any of this resonating for
Oh,
you?
totally. 1,000,000%. Um, so when you describe the Chiron, we're born, that I gave you my birth date.
Yeah.
So the minute I'm born, like that's what's going to happen. Those are my core trauma without even living life yet. That's the part that I don't get. Is
Well,
it from
it's
past
interesting.
life?
It's interesting because I don't have the answer for that. All I know is that since I've put this book out, and every time I share a Chiron placement with someone, they say it's accurate. It's been 100% accurate. So I don't know how that works out in the universe, but I do know I see astrology as a language. It's like a symbolic language. And I write in my book that astrology is the diagnostic point, but the prescription and remediation is found through taking personal responsibility for your own life and applying sound psychological principles and spirituality. So, you know, I don't know how this works, that when we're born certain things happen. I mean, we're creating our lives by our choices,
Right.
and I think the more conscious we can be about what we're creating, the easier our lives are going to be. I'm certainly learning that. And so with Chiron, it's just been remarkable that it really accurately identifies just the areas of vulnerability that we have. That for you, I use the from aviation, when you get on an airplane and before the plane takes off, the flight attendant says, put on your own oxygen mask first
Right.
before aiding and assisting others. That's kind of like your picture to keep in mind in your life, to always be conscious of putting on your oxygen mask first and then attend to others' needs. So I see this Chiron work as being really like a positive thing, like how we can more deeply care for ourselves and then be of greater service if that is your passion, like I sense it is.
Right.
So I can't answer your question, that you posed, but I do know that through taking personal responsibility and, learning healthy boundaries, caring for oneself, that you will be happier and healthier.
Right. And I do, I know all that stuff, all that is true.
Yeah.
And I find now I'm thinking about that, thinking I do strive for self-care. I do strive for it because I know I
Yeah.
lack in that. And I know that I try to do my walk, morning run and all that, to be outside and that, and do my meditation and be with me. But,
Mhm.
having a family and a husband and a house and all the things, right?
It's
Driving
a lot.
around, it's a lot, and you get that goes away. And that's so true because I see myself like fighting for that. Now that you say
Yeah.
that, like I fight for that. I fight for that. It's like I'm hungry for that,
Yes.
right? So that's like innate in me.
It is. And
Okay.
and that actually speaks to as well that Chiron and Pisces is found in your 12th house, which has to do with the unconscious mind. It has to do with doing something of meaning and value. And as you are in your podcast, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, that it's really important to you to to be imaginative and creative in your work.
Hmm.
And so it makes sense that you're really kind of fiercely protective, I hear, of this personal time and space because you know enough to know, like, this is what I need to be at my optimum.
Right.
Is that accurate?
Oh, a million. Yeah, I wake up super early. I wake up at 4 a.m. just to have my
Wow.
time, you know?
Yeah,
And it's,
that's
I don't,
awesome.
it's not even a question, you know, I just,
Yeah,
it is what it is. I know that's important to me and it fills me. And I
yeah,
have to have that time. And, you know, it's interesting to think of, you know, something that I've never heard of before, and how I've just like been focusing and researching and learning about you, but learning that in a meditation, you heard the word Chiron because you started
yeah,
quieting your mind. And then go into the Dalai Lama and how he was the one that you really wanted him to, what do you call, promote or
endorse my book.
endorse your
Yeah,
book. And tell me how you got into alignment with that, because I really believe in the way you connected to him is
yeah.
how I preach that with my girls and my kids that I teach. But will you go through that? I love that story.
Absolutely. I appreciate your question because, as much as even at that point I knew life is vibration first, it's in the unseen and we create from that unseen. And even someone listening right now, we all have imaginations and fantasies about what we want. So that's where I mean, like drawing from that place in your mind, in your heart, in your consciousness of like, what if I woke up? It's called the miracle question in therapy. What if you woke up tomorrow and your life looked like you'd really want it to be? That's what I'm talking about. And I thought, who would I like to endorse my book of anyone alive? And it came up, oh my gosh, His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. And so I quickly went on Google, found an email, just sent a very, from my personality, again, the old paradigm for me, like, oh, will you endorse my book and send a digital copy? And when I hit send, I knew immediately, like, I wasn't in the right heart space and I didn't hear anything. And I was like, you know what? And I went to meditation and I said, I would really like His Holiness's endorsement. What will that require of me to raise and change my own vibration to end up with this desired outcome? And I started to hear the weirdest things, Ashley. Like I started to hear things in my meditation, like, when your internet went down 2 weeks ago and you had to be on the phone for over an hour with the service provider and you were really rude to that technician because they couldn't help you fast enough, that's what you need to clean up. You need to be kinder. You need to
Ah,
be more compassionate to telemarketers. And because I am a kind and nice person, yet when it comes to things that are frustrating me, I have been very short, very dismissive. And I literally heard, you need to start cleaning that area of your life up to
huh,
receive His Holiness's endorsement because he really embodies compassionate living towards everyone, not just the people we love and are easy. And I was like, wow. Okay. So I was like, let me try this out. So I started to like find that within myself to like, oh, like, bite my tongue, start
right.
sending some different communications, even with friends and loved ones, like really starting to change my energy around compassion. And it was a 2-year process. And I can't believe it. Like it feels like it was in a blink of an eye now,
Huh,
but it was for 2 years. I meditated and I started to feel His Holiness in my meditation and in my imagination. One day I heard, I want to read your book. Like I heard His Holiness kind of say, I want to read your book, send it to me. So I drafted another email from a different position within myself, one of more humility and sincerity, asking it really means so much if you consider endorsing my book. I enclosed a digital copy and just let it go. And Ashley, part of me wasn't even sure that I'd hear anything, but a few days before my publisher needed all of my endorsements, I received the most beautiful letter from him,
wow.
like on his letterhead, saying that though he's not a student of astrology, he is a Buddhist scientist. And the methods in my book having to do with compassion, self forgiveness, and empathy are the ways that human beings heal their deepest wounds. And he knows that my book is going to help many and be a success. And he wishes me like all the best.
Oh
So
my
that
gosh.
was just such an honor.
Yes. Oh, see that. So the lesson in that is to, when you become in align like with something that you desire, like something that you want to manifest, right?
Yeah.
You get into alignment with that energy as
Yes,
if it is you have that, because that's how I love that. We
it
so
is.
that's the whole result of him connecting to you, right?
Yes, and it was day after day for 2 years. So it's like, you get in alignment, and I know and your listeners, because they're used to hearing you share this kind of information. We're meditating or we're walking somewhere beautiful or with your loved ones, and you feel an alignment. But it's like maintaining that, every day as much as you can continually. And then it's like finally something pops into manifestation, and we just have to be ready for it and just hold that space. I know sometimes I get impatient, and I've been hearing the universe tell me, like, I've been releasing impatience and replacing it with just, patience, and I can do this and everything's really okay. Like, slow down, Lisa. Like, it's okay. Like, let things unfold. Allow people, places, and things to come to you. And that for me has been really hard, Ashley, because I'm such a go getter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm such an action oriented person that for me, the lesson from Chiron has been to allow things to come to me in the right timing. And so that's been interesting to grow in that way. And I'm sure people listening can resonate with that experience in their own lives.
Yeah, for sure. I talked also before I met you on this podcast about surrender and
Ah,
trust, and to not visualize the outcome as if you have it in this concrete way, to know that it's going to come at the right time, and it might not look the way you visualized it, right? It might come in a different way, right?
when you say that, that's an interesting topic you bring up because I'm really focused on having that, like, okay, that the like we have a desired outcome, and I believe we can really align to that specificness of it.
Hmm.
But that the ways it are you saying the ways it might come could like surprise and delight us and be different than what we imagine? Is that what?
Yeah.
Because I do see that as a yes, as a
Yes.
possibility, but that we
Yes.
can actually have what we really want.
Oh,
Truly.
totally. Truly, 1,000,000%. Just like Abraham says, you can
Yes.
have, do you want to create a castle or a button? Like you
Or a
can do,
button. I was thinking that earlier.
right?
It's as easy.
Yes. And I always say, like, you can have a castle, the same exact way as you could have a button. What
Mm,
are you going to create? And I
yeah.
love when you talk about abundance and money and financial means. I love how Esther or Abraham describes that. And you were describing that in one of your podcasts I was listening to this morning. Do you remember that? Can you describe that? Because I love when people explain, the different types. When someone says abundance, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's just love and our life,
Yeah.
and how do you describe that?
I'm seeing abundance as freedom, as being free to do what I want to do, when I'd like to do it, how I'd like to do it. And I'm in the process of creating financial abundance for myself and kind of sharing that journey sometime on my show as it sounds like you listen to, and just really getting comfortable with, you know, uh, like being really appreciative of what I have. And because we tend to start to sometimes get too far ahead, and that's when anxiety comes up. When we go so far ahead in the future, we don't know how it's going to happen. So we start to spin out. And that's an indicator. Like, come back in, like zoom back in to more present day. Like, are all your needs met right now? Have you had a meal? Have you been able to go for a walk or exercise? Like, because I think for most of us, like, things are okay right now in
Right.
this moment. It's when we start to look at when the mortgage is due next week, or on the first, like, that's when anxiety can rise. And I've just been sending love there and like, universe, there's this money for me. Like, pay for this. Like, universe, I expect you to pay my bills and like send me the ways that my channels open, my antennas are up. I align with my attention is on my intention to manifest money, to have everything paid in advance, and just really feeling into what that feels like. And that for me is being in alignment. Like, you get the feeling of it first, and
Right.
then just kind of notice what unfolds. Like, does a client call and want a book all of a sudden? And like, has it been that way for you? I'm curious.
Yes, for sure. I know when I So when I pay the bills, I always say, thank you, when I put them in the mailbox, thank you, God, for
Yes.
the abundance for these bills to be paid, and then when they come, thank you for the bills that we have because we're living in a home that we have to pay bills, so
Yeah.
always having that mindset of, whatever you're doing or, getting to the grocery store or, all the things that there's some money exchange or something that you're in exchange of, always
Yeah.
being in that, having that an awareness of, look at what you have. Like, and then I feel like when you are that way, just like with a gratitude practice, I feel like once you have that gratitude to that level where it raises your vibration and you're feeling it, and you open your eyes and say, whoa, look at this is there's it's so hard to come down and to get, to stay high in that vibration and be the gratitude and appreciate the abundance and appreciate the bills and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
when you try to, and I think once you get there and it becomes a muscle, like when
Yeah,
we
it
work out,
is.
um, to have that muscle of that, I feel like your lows are smaller. We're still going to go low, but they don't take as long because the triggers, right? We don't,
Exactly. Yeah.
we are aware of the triggers. So we can be
Yes.
aware. It's all in awareness. And then, oh, wait, Ashley, you just did that. Let's fix it and go up the mountain. Tell me, because you do talk
Absolutely.
about triggers
I
a lot.
do, and our triggers are centered around this Chiron placement of our vulnerability and wounds even. Like for me, my Chiron is in the sign of Aries, and that speaks to a core wounding and my sense of value and worth. So for anyone with their Chiron and Aries, what this looks like is that no matter how much you might do or have done, if this is a past pattern that's leaving your life, you still might not feel like you're good enough. So it's a lot of performance based love, performance based affirming of yourself. You're looking outside of yourself to feel affirmed through achievement. And as we know, that typically is very fleeting when we're just basing our self esteem on what we do
Mhm.
versus learning who we are is valuable, not because of anything we're producing, but just because we are actually alive, taking breath, that we have inherent worthiness, that we're loved, that we're worthy. And when you've lived any of life, our sense of worthiness gets knocked around a bit by other people who are wounded and hurt. And so it's about really affirming yourself. I've learned affirming myself, affirmations like I am enough, I am valuable, and just really taking time to go on more walks, to enjoy life more. Some people might need to step up in some of your accountability, in some of how you're showing up for yourself, and others might need to actually pull back and do a little less and learn to receive. So for me, the journey has been about learning to receive, letting others help me, asking for help. Even, help for, can you give my book a review? Would you review my podcast? Things that might have been hard for me to ask for,
Mhm.
getting more comfortable. And because people often don't know we need some help until we share that,
Right.
especially if you have the outward appearance of being really strong. So I hope that's a helpful example of, again, how Chiron, knowing your Chiron, can help you in your own life.
Yeah, for sure. And why did you decide to put affirmations with each Chiron?
Because affirmations with meditation are two of the most powerful ways to change our thoughts, which generate the beliefs that we have about ourselves, about life. And then those beliefs are what inform our behaviors, how we show up, how we're not showing up. So it's through affirming every Chiron placement, I give unique affirmations for you specifically, since we all have different needs. And for instance, for you, let me turn to that page and you can tell me how these fit.
Oh, good.
An affirmation for Chiron and Pisces. There are 5 of them that I wrote. The first one is, I forgive myself. Because you might have judged yourself for not being able to do something you perceive well enough or meet a need well enough, really forgiving yourself.
Hmm.
A second affirmation is, there is enough for everyone. Kind of tying back into, there's enough for everyone. I don't have to be the one doing so much. There's enough. A third affirmation would is, I love myself just as I am. Like loving yourself just as I am and really feeling into that place of, oh, like I'm okay right
Mhm.
now. And then I am enough, which is another offshoot. of loving yourself as you are. And then lastly, love opens all doors. And I like to send love into my day when I meditate. Like I just send love through my day
Mhm.
to everyone I'm going to talk to, everyone I care about that I'm even not talking to. I just send love out to really reverberate and come back to me as well.
Yes. You are a big proponent of a morning ritual, as I am.
Yeah.
And I know you are, you realize meditation through, the last 5 years. That was what kind of opened this whole new awakening for you. But I know there's some neat meditations that you like. Like, will you share that with my listeners? Because I love somebody who has a morning ritual, first of all, because
Yeah.
I think that is one of my big time modules for this class that I teach kids. Because I always think, watching my girls their whole life, teaching them a morning ritual, they have that already embedded in that. They have a muscle, they know. Like, we
Yeah.
get in that car and go to school, and we've done our IMs, we've done our gratitude journals, we've done our smiling, we've told everybody it's going to be a great day, everything, right? They know all that. So it's their muscle. But I always think, could you imagine waking up, getting out of bed, running to the shower, grabbing your cup of coffee and getting in the car? Like, I just that doesn't resonate with me. I don't know where that alignment will take you in my heart for me.
Yeah. Well,
But will
first
you
of all,
go into yours? Yeah.
yeah, I love hearing that you've taught your daughters that. That is beautiful. Like, wow, to that they have that embedded in themselves to take forward in their lives. And it's so important that you're doing that with young people. Like, what I wish I would have known it when I was younger, but I know it now, so it's
Right.
fine.
All
You
good.
know, the past is done. Everything we want is ahead of us, like right here now and in the future. And I used to be that person. Alarm went off, jump up, grab coffee, get in the shower, leave, not even thinking, like, how are you, Lisa? And what are you even doing today? Like,
Right.
that was me for most of my life. And I think that's a lot of people because we just don't know any
Right.
better. So now I sleep with my phone in airplane mode. A practitioner shared with me that so your phone's not radiating whatever's radiating from it, 5G, 3G, that to sleep with it in airplane mode can help you sleep more deeply and get into REM sleep. So I do that. My alarm goes off. I keep it in airplane mode. And this took some effort in the last 6 months where I keep the phone in airplane mode. I'll set a timer for sometimes say 5 to 20 minutes and I'll drink my coffee and close my eyes and meditate. Sometime I'll use a guided meditation and then I have to take it off of airplane mode to play an audio track, but I don't let myself check emails until I've had at least a few minutes in silence, just saying thank you to the new day, like help me today, like be with me, guide me. Today is the best day of my life. Like show me that it is. And just taking a few moments with the universe, with my own inner being to just like meet this new day. And then I'll go to open emails. And I feel like it's really helped things just go better. That even when something comes up that is unexpected, it just kind of resolves
Hmm.
more quickly. Have you noticed that
Oh,
as a
for
result of
sure.
your morning routine?
Yes. And I'm a morning person, so I don't know if that helps the morning routine, but I've done that. I've always been the early riser and the early to bed person. Probably even I was to always tell my girls, I was always the first one to fall asleep at the slumber parties. And, like I'd be the first one up sitting there looking at everybody sleeping. But
That's hilarious.
I always have had that just innate in me. And I feel like I just never understood, like even going through dating people, and
Mhm.
wondering like, oh, they sleep until 10. Like, this is not going to work.
Mhm.
You kind of have that um, where it sets me for the day, and it sets us for that when something does come. It's not this big, huge, obstacle that I have to figure out. It's like, oh, then you kind of have that, oh, isn't that interesting? It doesn't jar you, because you've
Yeah.
already set yourself into this place of, an alignment, like Abraham would always say, right?
Yeah, or if it does jar you, because I've had some things happen. I mentioned before we came on the show that one of my dearest friends passed away unexpectedly a couple weeks
Oh,
ago. And I'm finding myself in this place of like being really easily agitated and a bit
Uh-huh.
thrown off. And I'm not used to feeling this way. Like the slightest thing, my internet's slow and I feel like I'm about to fly off the handle just inside of my own body. I feel like I'm getting very frustrated. And it's like, okay, okay. Clearly, I need to be really gentle and slow down and just know that I'm going to have to approach things more slowly and even ask for some help. Like, hey, can I have some more extra time on this deadline, because like I'm just moving through some grief and loss. And so I feel like I'm really in that, right now, and turning to meditation even sometime during the day, like
Hmm.
putting the phone on silent and maybe listening to an Abraham for 10 minutes or something to help me self-soothe, like going to a park here in New Orleans, Audubon Park, going for a walk in the middle of the day, like needing some more extra stuff than
Right.
usual because my friend's passing has upset me. And so, if you're listening and you're going through something like that, it's okay to slow down and to ask people for more time to be able to take care of yourself. So, I'm in that right now. And it's interesting to not quite be at 100%, but also
Yes.
that's okay.
Right. It's all good. We're all here. We're human. We have
Yeah.
these moments, it's not, there's going to be the ups and the contrast, right?
Yes.
And when you think, and I'm so sorry to hear that, I just can't
Thank
imagine.
you.
Oh,
Thank you.
but when you do have things that catch you off guard like that, and you're used to being in that play high flying disc,
Yes,
and all of a sudden, wait, that's not I'm not in my high flying disc, and this is not, it doesn't feel right. But
exactly.
to be okay with it, but also to know that, wow, that's so cool that I even know that, to have that,
Yeah.
to know that I'm not on that high flying disc right now. I'm dealing with this and I will get through it. And I know how to, and I
Yeah.
don't know how long it's going to take me to get back up there, but you know the difference. That's what I love, that when you know the difference.
Yeah, Ashley. And as you're talking, I'm thinking what I'm learning that's new is that I can still be in alignment even if I'm not feeling that high flying disc. It's kind of like a more grounded, quiet disc, but I'm
Hmm.
still in alignment. And so that's new because I got used to feeling just kind of really happy and more of those high vibe feelings, but you can still be in alignment and be more like quiet and internal. So that's new to
Right.
learn.
Right. And, I love that you always look for opportunities to learn.
Yes.
And I feel
Yes.
like, you have a pot, when I've met these beautiful souls on this podcast journey, and I know you have too with yours, and to learn have these 1 hour conversations with these people that are like-minded, are wanting to grow and are here. I mean, we're all here because we want to grow and learn so much, and we want to teach people the same. We're teachers, and
Yes.
and learners and growers and all that stuff. But to have that outlet that you have in your podcast too, for others to learn from you, because yours is more like therapy, learning. I love yours because I've learned so much
Thank
just
you.
trying to learn about you. um
Thank you.
yeah, so what do you where are you going from this point? Are you going to write more books? Are you expanding more programs? What programs,
Act
tell us what programs you have.
Sure. Actually, for me, my most favorite thing is doing this, Ashley. Like, I feel so much better right now than I did 45 minutes ago, like feeling some frustration and the weather's kind of gloomy. So I just want to thank you for having me as your guest because
Oh,
even this
good.
conversation and your vibration, I'm like, oh, like I'm living my purpose. So for me, the most exciting thing is going on podcasts as a guest and sharing my book because I want everyone to know how they can self heal through forgiveness and compassion for themselves. So I am excited to be on more shows, TV and as it presents and podcasts. I do have through my website a really cool online class on empowerment, and I spell it IN hyphen empowerment, like sourcing from within yourself. And it's little video clips that are 3 to 7 minutes where I'm teaching and sharing 20 psycho spiritual techniques that I've used in my life, like how to use a pendulum, how to use a
Oh, yeah.
pendulum to confirm yes and no questions, why you would set up an altar in your house, what that means, how to use crystal grids, how to use some basic crystals to help you to feel better, and authors that I've loved, books that I've read. So that's on my website that you mentioned, nolatherapy.com, to check out, and subscribing to All Things Therapy podcast, and just being out here.
Yes. What is a book that really made an impact in your life? Do you have one that you would always say, "Oh, you have to read this book"?
I've really loved Marianne Williamson, the
Hmm.
author and
Me
teacher.
too.
And yeah, I've gotten to see her speak in Los Angeles in person pre-pandemic. I got to interview her on my All Things Therapy podcast. And her book, A Return to Love, is just
Ah,
a
yes.
favorite of mine, as well as Pema Chodron, the Buddhist, female Buddhist, who her book When Things Fall Apart, that's a book I've read several times also. So When Things Fall
Huh.
Apart by Pema Chodron and A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Yes,
Two of my
I've read I
favorites.
remember. Yes, I've given Return to Love to many
Yeah,
people. That's one of those
yeah,
books I've bought many copies of. Have you been
yeah.
did you ever study the Course in Miracles?
I do. I do study A Course in Miracles. And it's so, that's a book. I don't read it every morning, but it's on my coffee table when I meditate to turn to a verse. But I often reflect on the passages when something happens. A Course in Miracles quote will pop up to help me kind of go through it.
Yeah, I love that. Me too. I have the book too, and um, you know, I grew up Christian. My mom grew up Christian Science, so
Okay.
she really kind of like she learned all that from her grandparents, and kind of when we were little, mind over matter. And I think that those little things would kind of sink into my mind, and I think
Hmm.
that's where the Course in Miracles kind of resonated a little bit, because I kind of think of how my mom kind of would speak sometimes when we were little. But I really, that Course in Miracles is something that I really love and
Me
live by.
too.
Yeah, I love
Me
that.
too. Yeah. Like shifting from our thoughts based upon fear to thoughts based upon love.
Right.
Such a big paradigm change.
Right. And to know when you have a client that comes to you for just one-on-one, you
Yeah.
do that, I assume, right?
I do. I mean, I always start where someone is. I want to understand what brings you in right now, like what got you to schedule this session. And I like to understand the person's own spirituality or lack thereof to really work with their own paradigm and see where they want support and some direction versus, I don't want to just impose my belief system upon anyone. Even in my book, I invite you to apply your own thought system, your own beliefs, even if they're different than mine. We all are so uniquely different, and there's room for that, for you to be your authentic self in this
Yes.
work.
Oh, the word judgment, that's been around lately because I have a 14-year-old, and dealing with different things with girls and drama, and, teaching her about judgment.
Mm,
And, when it's just, you don't judge. It's like the word judgment, I just don't like.
yeah,
And I'm all open to everything, just like you're just saying. And I try to tell the girls that, open up your eyes to their gifts. They're on their own journey. It's not
yeah,
to judge, and to be like the person that sends them love versus, condemning, or, it's not my way, that whole thing. But I remember you
yes.
talking about judgment. What would you say about judgment?
That judgment, we harbor, we create, or accumulate is the word. We accumulate these layers of judgment, almost like sediment, and how rock is formed, in geology. Like, just when you've lived any life, you just start to have these layer upon layer upon layer of judgments that we're often unaware of what they are until something happens and we feel bad and then criticize ourselves in our own minds. And that reveals to us what our judgments are. And so I invite you in my book to soften those judgments and transform them into something more supportive, because that is how we change, through being supported and encouraged versus berating ourselves or someone else. It might seem to be effective in the moment because fear can cause somebody to change, but it's not lasting change. It's
Right.
not deep down transformational change, and it's not going to last or help you to feel good.
So when you talk about the sediment and the rock and all the layers and stuff, how do you get those layers to be free? How do you remove that?
Through awareness. I've learned they come up even as you meditate, as you're journaling, being reflective, that those layers of judgments will kind of pop up in your own mind. And you know it when you feel anger, oftentimes at someone or something, the judgment will pop right up like they're an asshole. Well, there's a judgment. And maybe they are, but how can you greet that and meet that within yourself so it feels different? What am I going to do with my impression that this person is an asshole, for example? How do I work with that? And so that can kind of lead you to maybe think differently, like being open. I'd like to show up. I'd like to see the situation go differently and go well. And even that's when in A Course in Miracles, it comes to my mind, like I'm asking for a miracle instead of a grievance is one of the lessons, like trading in
Mhm.
a grievance for a miracle. So you can kind of invoke that principle. And so that's kind of how I see using
Yeah,
the
I
material.
and I always, it's the noticing your react when you react, the reaction.
Yeah.
And then say, "Whoa, Ashley, wait a second. Like, what is that? What's going on there? Why are you,
Yeah.
what's making you react?" Like you're saying, like on the freeway, why did that bother me? What's
Yes.
going on with me? Where's my peace? Why have
Mhm.
I let go of my peace? And I always use the word, don't let someone steal your joy.
Yeah.
Don't allow that, and try to be present with, like, that, wow, that's their stuff. That
Yes.
person's must be having a heart. Send them love and
Yes. Send
just
them
stay
love.
in joy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And you might take some distance from that person or situation. That's okay. And definitely send yourself some love because I think we need it too when we're in that reactive
Right.
place
Yes.
emotionally.
And I need to start being more. Now, every time I think of self-love, now I'm going to think, okay, am I getting my Chiron, working my Chiron, right?
Yes. Yes. That's definitely a way to look at it.
And then once you get, so be having the awareness, reading your book, knowing the Chiron that I am, the Pisces, understanding what I need
That
to
you
do,
that you're transforming. Yeah, and you've
right?
been
So
transforming that really well. Yeah.
okay, so now I'm transforming it. Are you always going to your whole entire life, or do you once come to this place where, like, I'm free?
I mean, I think that depends on the individual. I think we do reach places in our lives where it just is smoother and easier. And then you never know, something might pop up. There's a loss and we feel some feelings about that or taken back to an earlier memory. So I think just having these are tools that we have to be able to deal and cope with life with, you know, through it all.
Yes, for sure. Okay, we're at the hour, but it just made me think of the question, what advice would you give your 17-year-old self way back there, before you left your house that day with
Oh,
those
that's good.
backpacks?
I definitely tell her to believe in yourself no matter what anyone else says, to really follow your heart because she's been right on target every single time. Just totally listen to your inner voice and trust it and don't compare yourself so much to other people.
Yeah, I love that. You could probably make me cry.
Mm,
Oh,
yeah.
I probably am sensitive to that too, because I think of,
Yeah.
I was a mom and all that, but you think of, raising children and empowering them to feel that way, to believe in them and not compare, especially these days with
Yeah.
all this social media stuff.
Oh,
Ugh,
yeah.
raising children in this whole generation is there's a little bit more pressure there, to say the
Yes.
least, especially with girls. But anyway, I loved it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
we can find you on New Orleans. I love that whole thing. I'll never forget your website,
Thank
nolatherapy.com,
you.
and
Yes.
your or your podcast, All Things Therapy, right?
Yeah, on iTunes, everywhere podcasts are. And then on social media, I'm at NOLA Therapy on Facebook and Instagram.
Fun. Well, thank you so much. So
Ashley,
fun to meet
thank
you.
you. You're
I loved
welcome.
it. Love, love,
Me
love.
too.
Can't wait to even continue on this journey, where somewhere it will lead us together again.
Yes, it will.